Well, good morning. What I'd like to do in just a very few minutes is address this last part of the topic of this session, scientific cooperation, and just give you a few insights to, within the Arctic science community, how we see the opportunities for cooperation in the next few years. Certainly in the hallways, in the breakout groups, in the panel discussions over the last few days, this question of cooperation among scientists and across disciplines, cooperation between funding agencies, cooperation with other sectors and business has been a central theme. And it's something that has certainly occupied us within the Arctic science organizations for a little while. So I'll talk about these three acronyms here. First, the International Arctic Science Committee, which is a non-governmental organization which was created in 1990 by the 8 Arctic states and now has 22 member countries. And works very closely with all of the polar science organizations to promote and support multidisciplinary research and to improve our understanding of the changes taking place in the Arctic region in all respects and how that fits into the Earth system as a whole. And we work closely with other science organizations and, of course, with Arctic Council. Now, I just want to tell you about two initiatives that IASC and other partners are involved in right now. One of these is the International Conference on Arctic Research Planning, the third ICARP, and the International Polar Partnership Initiative. And both of these are really efforts to try to improve our coordination of the science and its impact in the longer term. So let me just say something about ICARP, or this International Conference on Arctic Research Planning. Periodically, and it's turned out to be on a decadal period, IASC and partners have convened a forum for identifying key scientific questions, issues, and priorities. So the first was in 1995 in Copenhagen, in 2005, which resulted in this report, Arctic Research, A Global Responsibility, and the science plans from ICARP to, I think, had quite an influence on many of the activities during the International Polar Year. And right now we're in the middle of the third ICARP, and I'll describe that now. So our approach is to try to better integrate Arctic research and develop a roadmap for the future. What are the priorities? How can we improve coordination? What does the science community really need to provide for policymakers and for people who live in and near the Arctic and for the broader global community, and to improve the relationships among those who produce the knowledge and those who require it? There are many partners involved in this effort. It's very much an effort of organizations that are already involved in many aspects of Arctic research, taking advantage of the meetings and the activities that they already support so that we can minimize the amount of additional travel and additional meetings. And so a forum like this, the Arctic Circle, is a great opportunity to continue those discussions. The program launched itself at Arctic Science Summit Week in Helsinki in April. There are many events almost weekly throughout the year, and the culminating conference will be during Arctic Science Summit Week in Toyama, Japan next year. And in fact, if you're interested in attending the Toyama conference, as a little commercial, the call for abstracts is open for another couple of weeks. And even here, over the yesterday evening and this evening, IASC, in collaboration with RANES, has two sessions where we're discussing science and technology of disappearing ice, and the outcomes from those sessions will feed directly into ICARP. So the outcomes will be the summaries of all of these various activities, a consensus statement on what those priorities are, and we hope this will be useful for many audiences, and from that a roadmap that we can use to plot how to be successful in improving how we can conduct our science in the coming decade. And this, we hope, will feed into the second initiative, the International Polar Partnership Initiative. So this wasn't the name that we started with. This was originally proposed as the International Polar Decade. But over the last few years, Jon Gunnar and I have been sort of gently co-chairing a steering group of many organizations that have an interest in looking at how we can sustain our efforts in Arctic science and polar science more broadly in the longer term. This is really an outcome of the International Polar Year and trying to make sure that the legacies of IPY are not forgotten, the scientific legacies, the collaborative legacies, and the human legacies. And so we need a mechanism to do that. The idea of a polar decade, I think, scared a lot of people. The idea of 10 IPYs back to back was a terrifying prospect for those of us that survived IPY. It was such a huge effort. We realized that putting resources into this type of science all at once, and to only do that every 2 or 3 or 4 decades, probably wasn't the best approach going forward. Every year is a polar year. How can we sustain that effort in a useful way over the longer term? So this has evolved then into the International Polar Partnership, and we have many partners. We're in the middle of trying to discuss and receive input from other organizations in how to proceed. And I'll just briefly describe the concept. The aims are to upgrade and sustain our observing system so that we can have better prediction and assessments in the future, to strengthen the platforms for collecting data, to continue to build long-term capacity in the Arctic, in the global community, and certainly to encourage early career scientists to participate and see a career over there, or to see a long-term career in this sort of work. And of course, to develop these synergies between different sectors, not just within the science community. So our timetable right now is really by the end of this year to have completed a broader consultation with organizations that have an interest in supporting and sustaining the concept of IPPI, and to look for endorsement from those organizations and to perhaps launch some initial activities by next year. So your comments and input are welcome, and certainly venues like this for introducing the idea of a sustained effort over the long term for Arctic research, and how to make that as useful as possible for a broad and diverse group of stakeholders is the effort that we think is necessary and that we're engaged in right now. Thank you.